Guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about the typical times that medical coders work during the day, and is there overnight shifts, or are there overnight shifts, weekend shifts in medical coding? If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue. I'm a medical coder. Okay, guys, if you are brand new to the industry, I want you to get a very realistic idea of what the schedules look like. I always see comments from people, and this has been happening more and more, so I know that there must be some recruiter out there who's talking about, oh yeah, you can set your own schedule. No, you typically cannot set your own schedule as far as working in the evening or working over the weekends. And especially when you're brand new, you should not be trying to get that kind of job because of the simple fact that you need mentorship while you're getting started. You know, a lot of people, especially during the pandemic, there was a lot of new people that came in because, yes, before then, you were not getting a job as a remote medical coder if you did not have experience. But because we were in the middle of a pandemic, everybody was at home. So there was a lot of people that started at home, and they've been at home ever since. And they're like, oh, Blue, no, I know everything, or I'm okay because I've got all of these years now, and I've never been around other coders. You don't know what you don't know. And so you're missing out on a lot. And so that's why I say to my new people that are coming in that are receptive to hearing sound advice is that you need to be looking at the jobs, you know, that, and having a realistic mindset about it, that you're going to be working during the day. It depends on the facility. It depends on the doctor's office, whenever they open. Sometimes you can start your shift at 6 a.m. Sometimes it's 7 a.m. Sometimes it's 8 and sometimes it's 9. It really all depends on the facility. And sometimes they allow their staff to stagger in. And so it's just basically 8 hours plus, for the day, because most of the time you're working 8 hours. Sometimes you may have a place where they're saying, okay, you can work 4 tens. And there's always those kind of places too as well. But keep in mind, these are during the day, okay? And so wherever you go, just that's the realistic expectation, is that you're going to have to work in during their hours, to preferably, I was going to say typically, but preferably in person, okay? Now, yes, there are a lot of places that are remote, but if you are a brand new coder, I will tell you that it is your road, whether you believe it or not, and you can disagree with me, but I'm telling you now, your road will be harder when you are trying to do this by yourself. And I have always recommended and told people that if you are going to be working in a place, sometimes they will say, we'll do in-person training and then we'll send you home. Or sometimes they won't even mention in their job ad that it's a remote position, but they'll train you on site and then they'll send you home. And that's okay. As long as you get some time with the coding staff or some time with people who can help mentor you, that would be great for you, rather than just trying to throw you into the deep end of the pool, okay? And sometimes people think that when they work remotely that the hours are just a suggestion. Well, they are going to be tracking when you clock in and when you clock out, just as they would if you were in a facility, okay? Or some other freestanding place. They're going to watch your hours. And whenever you are logged into the record system, it's already going to keep track of the time that you're in there. So if your time card and your hours that you're in the system don't match up, there's a problem. And now it's going to be an even bigger issue, because if you are logged in and you are not on the clock, this means that you are committing a HIPAA violation. It is a HIPAA violation because you are not authorized to be in that record off hours. Unless you're doing overtime, then that's something that's different. But if your hours are from 7 to 3:30, they expect you to be in the electronic health record from 7 to 3:30. Not, oh, I'm going to make up my time later. No, because that is a big fat HIPAA violation right there. So they don't want people doing that. They don't know, because if you're working remotely, which you should not, again, if you're brand new, but if you are working remotely and they see that you're in there, they're going to assume it's you. But hey, you just have to know this, okay? This is a serious thing, and you have to treat the time that you're clocked in that you are clocked in and you are there for that time. If you cannot do your duties that day, you need to clock out and you need to let your supervisor know. There's always that. But don't try to sit here and say, oh yeah, I'll work during the day, and then try to make up your stuff during the evening. The thing about working in the evening and why a lot of these positions don't exist in medical coding for working overnight, is because of the simple fact that the electronic health record needs to have time to update itself. That is the thing about electronic health records. It has to update all of the patients. It's got to upload all the notes. It's got to do all these things. And even though these things are done in real time, there's still things that it has to reconcile in itself so that it's able to keep everything updated. And then the software has to be updated. So because of this, it's going to disrupt time using the electronic health record. Again, we want to be involved during the day because that is when they know, hey, everybody's going to be doing the work during the day, and then we can run the updates at night. And that's typically when IT will run those updates. And so that's why a lot of these positions that are overnight or on the weekend do not exist. Now, a few years ago, when I worked for a level 1 trauma hospital, when I first started working for them, the lady that was the CEO, she was really awesome. She was like a hippie. And she was like, hey guys, you know your schedule. You know when you're supposed to be working. I'm not here to babysit you. I don't care what time you work. You pick whatever hours you want to work, but you will get your hours done before the end of the week. So you have from Sunday to Saturday to get all your time done. And I don't care when you get it done. I just want to make sure that you're meeting productivity and that you're completing your hours. Fine with me. So that worked great for me because I did work in the evening and I did work on the weekends. The thing about working in the evening, though, that did trip me up sometimes was, once a month they would run updates. And when they would do that, or sometimes it wasn't just once a month, it would be like a few times a month, because it wasn't just the updates to the electronic health record. It was sometimes they had to go in and reconcile things so no one could be in the system. And when those days happened, I had to make sure that I adjusted my time as far as, okay, I couldn't complete these hours here, so I have to make it up later. And so that was my personal responsibility. But positions like that don't come along very often. Now, I had a lot of professional power then too, because I had experience. I knew what I was doing, and I'm a very strong coder and very strong in a variety of specialties. That's what helped me in order to get that job. That's not a typical job for somebody who is, a first time out of the gate coder, because there was nobody there to watch me. Of course, I'm working remotely, and I'm having to sit here and manage my time and make sure that I complete all my hours and do all those things. So with that said, it is not impossible, but you would be looking for a long time in order to find that type of job, okay, where you could just make your own hours, because they typically do not exist, okay? And again, when I see people who say, well, I want to do this so that I can work overnight and I can work on the weekends, and especially when they're brand new, and they say, well, it's because, I want to be able to take care of my kids and things like that. If you're doing medical coding because you want to take care of your kids and you want to do this remotely because of that, and that's why you want to work in these evening hours or early morning hours, again, you're going to be hard pressed to find these jobs. And sometimes you can get a contract. Don't ask me about contracts though, because I don't work contracts. I know that they are out there. And sometimes it is just like, it's just typical of like, oh, that you would complete this many and you have until this time. And then that's how you set your own schedule. There's people that do that. Don't ask me, because I don't know anything about that. But those people do set their own schedule and have different requirements and things like that in order to meet productivity and stuff. But with that said, there's a lot of give and take to those types of jobs. So again, they're not always readily available. You don't always get all the benefits that you would working for a place, okay? So don't think that it's so easy to get something, oh, I want to work evenings and then over the weekend. And I did have somebody that commented that maybe working for inpatient coding would be good because of the simple fact that hospitals are open 24/7. Yes, hospitals are open 24/7, but the people that are taking care of those patients are overnight, and in the evenings are typically your nurses and nursing staff. And yes, while there are on-call doctors and things like that, they're not going to be there. Typically, they're going to be at home waiting for a call. And so because of that, that's what you're going to be knowing, okay? Is that even though the patients are there, they're going to be asleep, and what all is happening, okay? They're not going to need you there overnight. They're not going to need you there on the weekends. They are going to need you there at the facility when the provider is there. So in case they have questions. Now, providers won't always ask you questions. Sometimes you have to be bold enough to make the first move. That is going to be 99.999% of the time, is that you are going to have to be the person that reaches out to the provider, introduces yourself, letting them know who you are, and that if they have any questions, you got to make sure that you check in on them, because they won't ask you questions. They will typically have a standoff approach, like, okay, some of them are very personable, but you have to be the one to make the first move. You have to be the one to say, I'm your coder if you have any questions. And sometimes you just have to be available, and they see you and, hey, I do have a question, because for whatever reason, some of them just do not like to reach out, okay? But with that said, you want to make sure that you have a realistic expectation of the time that you're going to be working. It is typically going to be starting time. It varies depending on the facility, but some people have worked as early as 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. And that's typically from that range of time. If they allow that at the facility, some of them will say, we open at 7 and that's when you start. Okay, so it really all depends. For many years, I worked from 6 to 2:30. I can't do that no more, y'all. I cannot do 6 to 2:30 anymore. It is very hard, and I did that for years, and it was just very very difficult for me, especially like I have to get up and I have to do all these things, and so I had to adjust to my time. But I was able to do that because in my facility they do allow for that. And sometimes you are allowed to change your schedule, especially if they have a time that you can start, like a range from like 6 to 9. You can start anytime in between there. And so if I wanted to, if there was a season that I needed to start working at 6 a.m. to 2:30, then I would be able to do that. I would be able to request that. And then I could just change it back whenever they had the open season to be able to do that. It's twice a year at my facility. They allow that you can change your schedule and adjust, but you have to put in the paperwork, and you have to state the reason why. And it doesn't have to be anything really serious, but that is something that my facility does offer, because they do allow us to stagger in, which is great, because sometimes it's just too much with the traffic to get in. And so with that said, you are able to do that if that is allowed at your facility. But let's just have realistic expectations when it comes to the hours that we are working, and let's just not say, oh, let me do this schedule or that schedule, or I want something just in the evening. And that's not the way that this works. And especially because benefits are so important. Health insurance is the number one thing that is so important to anyone that's out there trying to get a job, is that in order to get those benefits, you need to work in those types of places, like hospitals or these urgent care centers and things like that, where they do have health insurance and they do offer that. Sometimes if you're if you're working for a private doctor's office, which I tell you guys not to do, and the reason that I tell you guys not to do that is because in private doctor's offices, the rules get a little bit skewed when it comes to, well, my duty is to be a coder. And when you work at a private doctor's office, the budget is a lot smaller, and they're going to take the full advantage of their people to do things and to be cross-trained in other positions. So if somebody doesn't come in, you may be called in to go up to the front and help with the check-in desk. And that's not your job. Your job is to be a medical coder. But in their eyes, they see you as equal to everybody else, which is not right. That is not the correct way. And oftentimes, especially in a private doctor's office, it's often the spouse or a really good friend of the doctor that is running the practice itself. And they often do not have certifications in coding, so they really don't understand what we do. They know that we're important because you're there, but they think that we're just billers and we just process paperwork and we just believe whatever the doctor is selecting, and that is not the case, or the provider. So that's the thing that you have to know about that. You have to meet them where they are, so you have to be prepared to work during the day. Okay, this is not deciding on, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that. A lot of people are coming in with those unrealistic expectations of, I want to do this and I want to find a job about this. And when you're not able to find a job about working in the evenings or working over the weekends, then you're among those chorus of people that's out there complaining that, oh, I can't find a job, I can't find a job. But you're not telling people that the reason that you can't find a job is because you're setting up that time barrier, that's the time that you want to. That's the time that you want to work. Okay. So there's two sides of that coin. That's why I always tell people, don't get all caught up in these Facebook medical coding groups, because they're very negative in that way, because you get people who get frustrated because they can't find a job and they don't understand why they can't work overnight. And as I explained, you can't work overnight because the system needs time to update. There's going to be those things that run overnight, and that's when that's the best time, because there's not going to be many users. And if you are working in a hospital, just because the patients are there 24/7 doesn't mean that coding needs to be there, because the provider's not going to be there overnight and just sitting there and doing anything or whatever, because they're going to be on call. And yes, while the ER is another place that is 24/7, there's a lot of other things that are going on during the night that, coders, they're not going to be needed at that time, which it would make sense though, right? To have coders overnight so you have 24/7 coverage. But at the same time, we need to be realistic, and that's not really where they're focusing on in the middle of the night. They're not focusing on asking coders in the middle of the night, hey, how do you do this? Because there's emergencies coming in, hence why it is the emergency room. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. And with that said, I understand that there's going to be a time when, hey, it would be really cool if I could get this, if I could get that. And like I said, that was the experience that I had working for a level 1 trauma hospital, was something that was very unique. And because that once that CEO, who was really cool, she left the organization, and so somebody else came in, and so that freedom with the time went away along with her. And while I was really fantastic about keeping myself on a really good schedule, everybody said, like all leadership said, that I was very consistent with my hours. It was other people who ruined it for everybody else. So therefore, I had to get on a regular schedule, which I was able to maintain a regular schedule in the evening and over the weekend. But again, there was times when I had to kind of move my hours because they were running updates. And so I didn't have that freedom, and I had to do a little bit more of like, okay, I'm checking in, this is this, so this is what I'm going to do here. And I had to plan it out. And that was a step that I had to take, and not that they had to tell me to do, so just to keep everybody informed and in the loop. That's what you have to do sometimes, is to, cover yourself. So with that said, let's just be a little bit more realistic. Being there during the day is a benefit to you. It is more beneficial to you to be there during the day. It is fantastic if coders, especially new ones, are working in person. And I can say this till I'm blue in the face and people still get upset at me, which I think is really foolish, because if you know anything about the industry, then you know that it's hard. This is not easy. And I don't care if you're coming in with experience. A lot of nurses, they get upset with me. Well, no, I have experience in nursing. That's fantastic. It's a little bit easier for you to read the documentation. However, that's not going to matter much if you don't know what you're doing when it comes to the coding, in which it is possible for nurses to be just as lost as somebody without medical background, because coding in itself is very unique. But you don't have to have medical experience to be a medical coder, okay? Does it help? Yes, because then you know about the procedures, you know about the medical terminology and the anatomy and the pathophysiology. So you understand all of that. That's fantastic. It's great to have that. But if you don't have that, it's okay. You can still learn it. Okay, you can still learn it. I have said that I feel like I've spent years trying to catch up to these doctors, because that's the way I've always felt, is that these doctors have all of this knowledge, but they had 10 to 15 years on me before I got to them. And okay, now I got to try to catch up. So I spend my time making sure that I review anatomy, review medical terminology, review all these things, even op reports or these articles that these doctors write. I love to read the articles from the New England Journal of Medicine. You can sign up for them online, nejm.org, nejm.org, and you get access to free articles every month. And so you don't necessarily have to subscribe to the magazine, which I do, and which is fantastic, because I like the ability to be able to read these articles that these doctors write, because they're doctors talking to other doctors. And when it's doctors talking to other doctors, they don't have to think of like, how can I rephrase this so that the lay person understands? They are talking to each other. I can catch up. I can catch up. So that's what I always say. And so again, having exposure to that kind of helps. And yes, it did stray from the subject a little bit, but this is the thing. When you are working there during the day, another beneficial part of course, being in person and working around your providers when they are there is that you can hear things that they're talking about. For a while, I was put on the surgeon's hallway. Okay, so my office was on the same hallway as the surgeon's. And let me tell you something, it would get a little rowdy back there, but sometimes you would hear them just talking about a surgery approach, not talking about patients, but surgery approaches. They would consult each other, hey bro, and they would ask each other, how would you approach this type of surgery? And so then they start talking about their experiences and what they've done. And so in listening to this and just being a fly on the wall, typically, because I'm in my office doing my own thing, but you hear them in the hallway because they all have their doors open too. And they're talking about these surgeries, again, not talking about patients, but they're talking about their approaches to these surgeries and how would they do that. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. And then you can hear all of this, which is again fantastic, because it's exposure to what you're going to be reading. And the more exposure you have to what is on paper, the more sense it's going to make. And so again, because of that, because of being around my providers and being able to get that secondhand knowledge, that's again what helped me, and it keeps me motivated, because that's I love to learn. I'm a nerd, though. I'm a nerd, and that's just what I do. I do nerdy things, and I find those things fun, like reading the New England Journal of Medicine. I find that fun. That's downtime reading to me, because even though a lot of those words go right over my head, it's still, I have a dictionary. I can look things up, so I don't allow my own feelings of, oh, this is too hard. I don't allow that to get in my head when it comes to that, because I'm like, no, I'm going to figure this out. This is a puzzle that I am going to figure out. So, but I wouldn't have that if I was at home away from my providers. So that's just something that you guys got to know there. Okay. There's benefits to being there during the day. All right. And that socialization, though I know it can be difficult. Okay, guys, I know it can be difficult. If you're an introvert, I know that your social battery runs out very quickly, all right? And believe it or not, I am introverted myself. Even though people say that's impossible, Blue, you seem like you're very extrovert. When it comes to coding, I am extrovert. But me on the street, no. I'm just like, okay, I gotta go here, gotta go there, and that's it. I don't spend a lot of time, doing this. No. So, but yes, that's the way that it typically works with the schedules, okay? And however much time you build for your leave and things like that is dependent upon where you're working. Some places are better with leave than others. And that's just what I got to say there. Because again, I don't want to say anything and people are expecting, oh, it's this many leave hours you're getting per pay period. Again, that all depends on the facility or the place that you're working. Okay. So be realistic. Expect to work during the day. If you are lucky enough to find out about contract coding that you can set your own hours, fantastic. But I will say that you will struggle if you have no experience. Okay. The more experience you have before you dip into that remote coding side, the better. But I can only say so much because it's just going to go, it's just, for some of you, you just don't want to hear it. You just don't want to hear it. And it saddens me because, you know, there's a lot of frustration out there that doesn't even need to be, because you wanted your way. And that's just not the way that this industry works. This industry is very selfless. And you see, you need to be there during the day because the providers may need you, or you may need to educate them. So you need to be there and be present with them. Or you may need to be remotely, wherever you are, you may need to be present during if the main campus is on the East Coast and you're on the West Coast, you have to be present during that East Coast time, like it's there. So that's the thing. You have to question about that wherever you're applying, but just expect it. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If this video helped you, please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.